Hey everyone, this is smpratte, and today we're going to talk about buying raw versus graded cards. I think every era or a couple years, this dynamic or the opportunities I think change, but right now, if you don't want to listen to me talk for 10 more minutes, the short answer is there has never been a better time to buy graded cards, and that is simply because everybody and their dog wants to be a pokey investor. So that means there's just a ton of constant supply hitting the market, which is creating more of a buyer's market for pretty much most cards outside, the K-shape upper tier stuff. But ultimately, graded right now is at the best value option it's ever been. I'm going to break down why in length in this video. So first, I think each era has a different setup. If you scroll back 10 years, it was almost the opposite. The waters were much clearer. You could throw your old rod in there and you'll probably get a mintier version of a card, where today there's a lot more nuclear waste out there into whatever pond you're fishing in. Even if it's like a hole in the wall, super secret Japanese site that only you and your friends know about, now more people know about it. And also on top of that, you have more fakes, you have more scams, you have more Team Rocket, there's like Team Galactic and all these new Team Rocket subsidiaries. So there's a lot happening today that just wasn't 10 years ago, which made it a lot easier to buy raw cards in the upper tier condition. So even if you're a collector or someone who doesn't even care about, buying, grading, and, selling it for money, it was just an easier time back then to buy raw, where today, wholly the opposite. Like, just completely different. That competition of everyone trying to be a pokey investor, everyone trying to make money now. And it's not just like it used to be like, okay, yeah, that's just like US scalpers, whatever. There's like scalpers everywhere. They got them in Japan, they got them in the Netherlands, they got them in museums, like they're all over the place. So this competition, and more importantly, this like very short-term frenzy type competition, is really like full blast right now. So what that is doing is it's making raw cards a very high risk situation. So number one, you have the least amount of raw mint supply probably at any point in time. It doesn't really matter what type of card it is. If we're talking first edition base, if we're talking Japanese, old back era, new back era, like this is by far one of the lowest, if not the least amount of raw mint copies available. So if we contrast that again, going back a decade, the waters were clear. It wasn't like a Mitsuharita Grimer from Fossil situation where it's like, just piles of like dark from Netflix, like these nuclear waste barrels lying around. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. If you bought first edition base, it had a better chance of being near mint to mint. If you bought pretty much any WotC Hollow, it was mostly going to be near mint to mint. I remember my gold stars and stuff that I purchased. I actually did a binder video, which hopefully I'll upload eventually, where I show some of my original binders from like 10 to 15 years ago, and most cards in there are probably going to be near mint to mint condition, because that was just the standard. Grading wasn't as popular. You didn't have everyone trying to stonk and make money. The market was a lot cooler back then, so a lot more mint raw supply. Where today, another reality of this very optimized market is that the raw mint supply is lower. Now, of course, you have caveats, like modern cards are literally being printed as we speak, so naturally those are probably going to be more mint, but we're talking, anything beyond that, even whatever you want to call it, like modern from 5 years ago, that type of stuff is already being circulated more. And then the further you go back, the more it's circulated, the more it's rip, flip, dip. So that's the reality, is least amount of mint raw supply. Also, what I touched on earlier, more fake cards than ever. This is everywhere. It used to be mostly like, okay, this type of person doing a Charizard on eBay or, whatever Craigslist thing, where now fakes are everywhere, to the point where you have a lot of them in Japan. You see all those notifications when you're buying on Yahoo or whatever it is. They're telling you, hey, look out. Fakes are here now. They're here to stay. So it's a problem that's everywhere, that exists at a higher degree level than it did 10 years ago. So another reason why you have elevated risk when you're buying raw. Also, if you're looking at it from a cost perspective, which I think this is the most important part, regardless if you're trying to make money or not, even if you're just purely a collector and you just want this to enjoy, if you don't hit a 9 or a 10, doing it yourself, you're losing money. For most of these cards, especially if you're not hitting a 9, for most of these cards, you're in a loss. And on top of that, it's compounded by the time, energy, everything else that goes with it, not to mention up charges. If you have a card that's worth, more than a 143 Charizard or Ancient Mew, you're probably going to get hit with an upcharge if it does hit a 9 or 10. So there's a lot of factors there to consider that, again, weren't here 10 years ago. You didn't have upcharges 10 years ago because these cards weren't mooning like they are now. So you're in a different place today where there's so much more risk inherently in raw cards. And I really don't think I can overstate how tedious it is, at least for me, to do a raw to graded process now than it was even 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. It was so much more streamlined. It was so much easier. Where now I'm like, okay, which one of the like 5 things I have to worry about? Like, there's so many hurdles you have to jump through now. Even the process of just like buying a card, hoping that the seller was right about the damage, and hopefully there was nothing wrong in the description, and actually comes to me safely, and then I gotta sleeve it, then I gotta type in the submission, pack it up, send it out, hopefully no damage in this process, wait for it to come back, pay for all that. That's all time, that's all life that is finite, that you are wasting doing this process. Where segueing into graded cards, that's all taken care of. Graded cards right now are at the lowest risk ever. And keep in mind when I'm saying this, I always have to do like a like cynic whatever caveat in all of my videos. I'm saying exactly what I'm doing, as a buyer. I am buying many more graded cards today than I ever have. Back in the day, it was almost all raw, where now it's going mostly this direction. I buy very few collections from Japan. I used to buy those nonstop, like every other week. I was just inhaling those like Snorlax. Like, you give me as many ungraded collections as I can see, where now I can't even tell you last time I bought a random ungraded Japanese collection, where that was something I was always doing. Again, because of those risks mentioned that aren't there at all and graded. Right now, because everyone is poke investing, basically the TLDR is they're acting as middleman, and they're doing all that process for you. Because there's so many people who are, even people, again, we got people now that will wait in line and waste so much of their life, maybe making $5 an hour on average when it's all said and done, to just get a promo or to get a thing or whatever it is, get a card signed. So these type of people are basically working for you, if that makes sense, and doing all this legwork and just putting those cards on the market. And that doesn't mean you're just gonna, roll over and there's a University Magic card PSA 7, just wait for me at $1,000. It's not like that. But the bottom line is a lot of the cards that are more competitive, that have tens of thousands of copies and things like that, it's much easier just to do bird in the hand. And again, if you're a collector, it's true. If you're even a seller, it's true. You basically have people taking the risk for you, because there's so much graded supply right now. There's so many factors for why cards are going cheap. The obvious one being more competition, more supply. Naturally, that's going to bring down prices. But the other factor there is there's something interesting that emerged on E4, where people said, hey, can we do a PWC after buy thread? Meaning like, okay, when these weekly auctions close, I wanted to get that card, but I forgot to bid on it, and I would have bid more. So there's so many cards now that cards get lost in the fog. So you could even be that super fast, have no patience flipper. Like, you can be that person, and there's still some opportunity sometimes, because there's so many cards happening at once. I feel like there's certain cards you just pick, maybe wait a little bit, better time to sell, things like that. But case in point, you didn't have a thread like that 10 years ago. You didn't have a thread like that even 5 years ago, where people said, dang, I wanted to buy this card. It went lower than what I would have paid. If you want it, let me know, I'll pay more. That just did not happen, years ago. But again, it's more to this point that there's so much graded supply out there, it's in favor of the buyer. And as a business as well, the big brain move is buy this stuff and do the crazy thing. I don't know if we can say this word anymore in 2023, and hold it. Be patient. Wait for a tomorrow a few years from now. Everyone only sees tomorrow, but wait for another tomorrow a few years from now. Dare I say, it might be a little better. It might be a little better than what you bought at if you wait, because we've done this dance before. This isn't our first trip to the rodeo. This is 2017 all over again. It's just 2017 on steroids. It's everything that was going on then, except faster, more optimized. Things are more liquid as well. That is a perk. It's the same thing again. I beat that dead horse into the ground about WotC Hollows. I was buying WotC Hollows 8 to 9s from anywhere from $20 to $50. Even then, that was cheaper than throwing your old rod in to slightly cleaner waters, grading it, and doing it yourself. Not even mentioning time and all that, it was still cheaper. Bird in the hand, best option. That's what you have today for a lot of this stuff. And then another thing to mention, I think what's counterintuitive is I'll see that, the new member cross, do a post on E4 and say, hey, I want to do a binder, but I'm struggling to find like X card or whatever it is, any advice? And one of those that's actually counterintuitive for some people is graded cards are some of the best for binders. This is the craziest thing from the whole video. Cracked raw is greater than raw in a lot of cases. This is how bonkers the market is right now. Like, you can go buy a PSA 7 of most cards, especially 6 and 5, of most cards, crack it, put it in a binder, and that's going to be cheaper than like the LP copy. That's where the market is right now. And what's crazy about that is the scale's even higher. I did that for a lot of my Magic sets. I remember I got Tabernacle, PSA 7 actually, was my Tabernacle. I think I had like BGS 7.5 on Mishra's Workshop, and antiquities and stuff. But that's how I put together a lot of my Magic stuff, and for Pokemon as well. 7 was usually like my sweet spot. Back then, you could do like 7, 8 if you wanted to be fancy and do 9s. But now you can do that today as well. There are a lot of options out there, even in that upper range. Keep in mind, 7 to 10 is the mint range, near mint to gem mint. That is the upper range. When you go to a store, what's the condition rating? It's usually like battle torn, war fought, Purple Heart Survivor, played Pokemon, LMP, LP, and then what's the highest? Near mint. So, when you're talking PSA 7, that's a really good looking card. I have PSA 7s here off camera that I look at, of many cards of all values. So this guy right here, literally PSA 7 Voltorb, right next to me, next to my shoulder pad. So there you go. That is something that I think a lot of people, especially now, can really utilize, even if you're just trying to put a binder together. Even if you just see this as, I love Pokemon, I want to spend the least amount of money to get the most bang for your buck, Graded is here for you. Like, it's unreal how much value right now is in Graded. One other thing to mention, we're talking about the Japanese stuff that I mentioned earlier. This is really getting into the weeds of the risks of raw, is that you don't have buyer protection overseas. And what it used to be, when the waters were clear and you could see shining Gyarados, swimming throughout, back then, nobody cared if you bought from a zero feedback buyer. Nobody cared if you bought from someone who had a little rainy umbrella feedback. It wasn't super beauty goods. Nobody cared back then because most of the stuff we were buying was easier. Where today, you are facing so many fake screen promos, Poncho Pikachus, pick your poison. There's so many cards now that are fake. There's so many sellers. On Yahoo, it's the Wild West, ironically, the Wild East, where you could just cancel an auction. You don't like it? I don't like that price. I'll just cancel and do it again. It does not matter. Like, they don't have the regulations we do here, like on eBay and other platforms. So therefore, you're running up the most amount of risk because you have absolutely zero protection. You will just get hosed if something goes wrong. So that's another mention there, is that there are more scumbag sellers. There's more people aware. There's more people aware of how to hide damage. And once you get that card, you're just stuck with it. It's not like eBay where it's like, yeah, I bought a Charizard and they sent me like a picture of a first edition Charizard. They sent me a sticker and then you just clearly return it. You're good to go. That's not how it is. In Japan, you were stuck with that picture of Charizard. So maybe you can put the sticker on your fridge to constantly remind you every time you need to hydrate that you do not want to mess with it. Because again, Graded eliminates all that. That's the raw truth. That's what it is right now. And then last but not least, to end on a positive, this wasn't too negative. We went through the pros and cons of everything, but to end on a positive here, this is one of the best times I've experienced started collecting. I am saying, like, my true honest opinions of what is going on right now in the market, always constantly adapting to what's happening. In the almost 20 years I've been doing this, this is one of the best entry points for people to start collecting because you have so much information at your disposal. You have so many people competing. You are at a point now where you can sit in your little, whatever it is, your $100, $50, $500, computer chair. These chairs are insane, by the way. The steel case chair, work of art. More comfortable than ever. Can't believe how much they cost. I digress. Best time to start collecting ever. Like, outside of maybe the lowest point of Pokemon, which, you really had to be super, super, super into it. A lot of barriers there, knowledge barriers to entry, where today it's all at your fingertips. And because you have so many people competing, so many people who don't mind because they just enjoy it. There's people who enjoy doing this so much that they probably break even or even take a loss because they just love the culture. They love doing this rather than working at, I don't know, Walmart, Amazon, whatever it is. They like it so much that they will hustle and do the thing. And because of that, it creates a great buyer's market for people entering or collectors entering. And then the caveat is for sellers, the through point here that you might hear, that you might have figured out yourself, is patience is a virtue. Because everybody right now is so competitive and everything's so short term. Everybody only sees the tomorrow and they don't realize there'll be the tomorrow 3 years from now. There'll be a tomorrow 5 years from now. There's so much focus on the instantaneous, the stonk, the Van Gogh Pikachu, or whatever the next iteration will be of the Van Gogh Pikachu. So many people are so tunnel vision on that there is an opportunity to buy in this optimized market and just wait it out. Just see what happens. It's not to say that if you buy some of this stuff, you're going to be a multimillionaire because you bought it when smpratte said it was, the best time to enter the market. It's not some type of instant guarantee. The bottom line is there is an opportunity here presenting itself. and certain cards will do better than others. Certain cards on the uppercase slope, if you watch my K-shaped recovery video, will probably do better than some on the lowercase slope. The TLDR is the harder to acquire, optimized cards, older variants better. Those right now being overly competitive, everyone trying to, make money as fast as they can, there's opportunity with some of those. So that's the takeaway for buying raw versus graded. Again, this is a constant dialogue, and I feel like it changes in every market, because if we scroll back even like 4 years, I think it was definitely easier in 2019, 18, 17, the further back you go. Basically, as further back you scale, it just becomes raw. Where the further you go this way, it becomes more graded. And now that doesn't mean that there's not a raw Charizard sitting out there waiting for you to grade it and, make your money or do whatever. Of course there is. There always will be mint ungraded examples. There's less of them today. There's more competition today. And the market is only going to get more optimized. So there it is, guys. That's what I have on buying raw versus graded. Again, this is my current opinion, feeling, everything on the situation right now in the market. It's always evolving. As I mentioned 10 years ago, completely different. But you know the deal. Let me know how I feel. That's pretty much it. Till next time.